Welcome to the Next Level Podcast, powered by San Manuel, a series connecting you with the best minds in casino, hospitality, tribal government, and beyond. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on Next Level Careers. Joining me today is Kari Stout-Smith. She's the Chief Operating Officer and General Manager of Cache Creek Resort and Casino, and also someone that I call a dear friend who I've known for many years. So please welcome Kari. Kari, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for the lovely introduction, and thanks for inviting me to be on the show. I feel the same, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, great. You know, we like to get the show started by asking people about their origin story. Let's hear what your origin story is. Could you share that with all of us?
Yeah, and it's timely because I just shared it today, actually, with our Cache Creek Experience employees. Those are employees who are going through our new member employee orientation here. And I always have to chuckle a little bit because I feel like I'm dating myself when I share this story. You know, I didn't know very much about casinos before I got started. I was growing up in rural East County, San Diego, and I did what you did back 26 years ago, which was to open a newspaper and look through the want ads. And when I say that now, some of the employees in new employee orientation kind of look at me and blink their eyes like, what's a newspaper? And I explain now we have digital versions, and it starts to come full circle for them. Employees who are our age or older, of course, know what I'm talking about, but that was how I got my start. I saw an ad in the paper for a position. I think it paid $8 an hour for promotions hostess. And I was going to school. I had done some modeling and acting, and I enjoyed that aspect of, you know, being out in public and being on microphone. And so it seemed like something that would be really fun to do while I was finishing my degree. So I called the phone number, and it linked to Verona Casino in San Diego. I was asked to come in for an audition. They took it very seriously, and I came in and I auditioned for the role, and turned out that it was a promotions hostess, but also guest services representative. And this is pre players clubs at the time. We were still doing manual tracking of our guests, so that was one of the things that we did, was just general assistance to guests, tracking of their time and their play on the floor, and then giving away cars and cash and other prizes. And one thing led to another. It was 1998, and this is just as the propositions were happening in California to fully legalize California tribal gaming. And so I feel like I really got in at the right time. Wasn't something that I thought I was going to do forever initially, but you know, it was something that I thought I would do as long as it continued to hold my attention and I continued to grow and develop. And that was the best thing about the industry at that time, was the opportunity to get a lot of exposure. It was a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, but you could learn a lot very quickly. And if you were the right person, motivated, you had an opportunity to really grow your career quickly.
That's fantastic. And you know what? Verona was always known as sort of an innovator with respect to their marketing and their technology and guest service. Sounds like you were there during, you know, like as you mentioned before, the big expansion of gaming through the propositions that the tribes worked through with the state. Can you talk about, like, what was it like being in marketing and really trailblazing some of those concepts? Because I think a lot of us in the industry now just kind of think through marketing promotions and stuff and go, well, that's kind of like normal. But back then, there was some really interesting and unique things that you did at Verona, and I know you were there during that time period. So did you all just sit around a room and just say, like, hey, what are we going to think of? Like, what was that process like? I'm always curious about the creative process.
Yeah, you're taking me back to some really good memories and some good times, some people that I'm still really good friends with to this day because of those shared experiences. You know, it was really guerrilla marketing in its truest form. It was, you know, I don't want to say there weren't any rules. We still had regulations back then, but things were much more undefined than they are today. And I want to say a little bit more shoot from the hip, but in the best of ways, because, that experience of really building promotions, building events, building marketing campaigns from the ground up, and quite literally being pulled into a meeting room with top leadership, and they would look at us and say, we think we're having seen some softening of revenues. What can you do next week?
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about marketing cycles, we're looking much farther. I mean, we're in the process right now of building calendars and budgets for next year. So in some ways, I miss some of those aspects of being able to really adjust and pivot very quickly. And it's something that we work to maintain here today at Cache Creek, is the ability to still be flexible, but also having better long-term planning, better projections with regards to what we expect over the course of the year, based on seasonality, based upon how the calendar stacks up, based upon we're going into an election year, right? There's a lot of different things we have to consider for our marketing calendars next year, but nothing really beats the adrenaline rush of let's come up with a crazy idea. And it was constantly, Verona, one of my best memories is it was constantly a process of, once we did that event, it would be a post-analysis, what went well, what could we improve upon, and then if you repeated that same promotion again, it was constantly, how do we continue to outdo ourselves? And that's just a core philosophy that I love and embrace to this day. I am not a big fan of staying static. It's always about how do we continue to grow and develop and innovate and raise the bar for ourselves and for our guests. 13 years at Verona, I consider it my alumni. It's my it's where I learned everything I know about the business today, and there's some great memories from those times. So thank you for bringing that back up.
That's great. I just love that time period. I remember and I recall driving out. I think that's how we met, was when I was coming out for the first time to see casinos in California, and we connected somehow. It was either through LinkedIn or some other online channel, and I just said, you know what, I'm gonna reach out and see if I could connect and hear what's going on. And boy, it was just eye-opening to see the operation 20 years ago. What a transformation. Talking about transformation of the industry, what are you seeing now? Is there anything that jumps out at you that you would like to highlight or talk about?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evolution of the industry that we're experiencing right now, and certainly in these last few years. We talked before we got started with the interview today about the purpose behind this podcast, and really sharing with people what an exciting, diverse, dynamic industry this is. Post-pandemic, it's interesting to me the emphasis on remote work. And personally, although I consider myself an introverted extrovert or an ambivert, I love being around people, but I also need time to recharge my batteries by myself. I just couldn't imagine being fully remote. And while we were closed for the pandemic, it was such a strange time. And I really found myself just hungering for people and laughter and boisterous conversation. And the day that we reopened after the pandemic at closure, June 8th, 2020, my cup couldn't have been more full to see people coming back into these environments, right? We provide entertainment, we provide escape. I actually talked about that with our new employees earlier today. The fact that this is one of, I think, very few places that you can escape the reality that's happening outside of our four walls and just feel like you get a little bit of time to reset, whether that's on the gaming floor, in the hotel, in the spa, on our beautiful golf course. There's lots of different ways for people to just restore themselves before they go back into the world. And hospitality industry's taken a hit in the last couple of years. And I think that there are people who, for very valid and good reasons, chose to go different directions with their careers. But it was interesting. I was on a call just before this interview with you, and we're onboarding a new employee engagement app. It's called Beekeeper. And as we were waiting for everyone to join the call, the Beekeeper remote employees were kind of commenting and envious of the fact that one of our colleagues was a little bit late to join the meeting. And the director of HR said, I'm just going to run next door and knock on his door. I'll see where he is. And they were like, wow, you can run next door and talk to a coworker. And I was like, wow, you can't run next door and talk to a coworker, right? I mean, that's the difference. So, for people who enjoy people, for people who enjoy gathering, who enjoy the energy and excitement that you get off of, communal activity, that's what we still offer. It's just the evolution of how we offer that in a post-pandemic world, with fewer staff to be able to do those jobs. And so an emphasis on how do we make the jobs that we do easier for our employees to perform? How do we work more on engaging with them and providing them a good experience behind the scenes so that they'll give our guests a great experience out front where the show happens on the casino floor? I think those are really the aspects of the modern casino environment that I'm enjoying most, is how do we really take what we've been doing for decades and refine it to create a more modern, more inclusive, and even more exciting environment than ever before.
Yeah, that's great. Great points there. And I think what it illustrates is that your ability to look at what your core business is and adjust it and adapt to market conditions that are presenting itself and continue to be successful with those core concepts. Did you learn that on your own, or did you have mentors that kind of helped shape the way you developed as an executive and develop these skills? Trying to get out of this, conversation about mentors and how important were they, or was it a different style of maybe mentorship that worked for you? What's sort of your take on that?
I think the seed of the core philosophy really started at Verona. There was a very big emphasis on taking good care of the employees, on providing the training that was necessary at the time. It wasn't like there was an abundance of skilled casino workers in San Diego back in, the mid to late 90s. We were really building from the ground up. And so Verona recognized that you had to hire the right personality and train the technicality, and then provide as much training as possible along the way to help people continue to develop and grow. And I love that model because it worked for me. It was something that bred so much loyalty and appreciation and confidence, gave me a ton of confidence as I was, growing in through my early 20s to mid 20s to 30s while I was at Verona. One of my mentors, I feel like we could probably take up the whole hour if I started to go name by name, but Nick Dillon, who was our casino manager and then assistant general manager for a long period of time, really had a people first approach. Lee Skelly, who was also an AGM at the property, just a fantastic mentor who was one of the first men in my career who came from a very traditional casino background, which was very male oriented, very male driven, however, didn't have those philosophies. I learned, I think, a lot of my biggest supporters were men because that's who I was surrounded by. So, I was also very fortunate to have some female leaders that I followed. Carol Shane was the longtime general manager at Verona. One of the first glimmers of me seeing that was a possibility because there was another woman who was in that seat. She came from an HR background, so she had a very people first approach. Linda Devine, who was the vice president of marketing that I came up under. And I'd really be remiss if I didn't mention CJ Graham, who was my GM when I moved to Thunder Valley. That was my first, kind of step outside my training grounds at Verona, and he was my first GM there, and later my GM at Agua Caliente as well. And I want to say one of my biggest champions, also one of my biggest challengers. He really taught me kind of the hard knocks of the business and how to stand my ground when the room was not always so friendly. So I think it took a lot of, that warm, you can be who you are and still be successful in this industry type of mentors, but also those mentors who went, look, you can be who you are, but just know that this industry may not always receive that. And how are you going to stand your ground when you're faced with hard times and hard conversations? So I feel very, very fortunate to have had the leadership that I've had, and to have been exposed to some really amazing leaders in our industry.
That's fantastic. And you touched upon something as you were talking through your story about CJ, and that was that you left Verona to step outside to try other opportunities, pursue other opportunities, which led to many successes along the way for you. What was that like? I know that that's people early or maybe middle of their career contemplate that, and it's very scary for some. So how would, what would you say to individuals who may be nervous about, and of course, we're not here saying, hey, leave your employer, that's not it, but people think through those. It's a very real emotion and thought process. I'm curious how you process that. How did you kind of come to the conclusion, hey, I want to pursue this, and it's going to be with a different organization?
It was a very emotional and difficult leap of faith to take. You know, for many, many years, I didn't want to work at any casino other than Verona because they had just bred so much loyalty in me and had invested in me. Before I left, at one point in time, I knew the count of how many offices and titles that I had had over the 13 years that I had been at Verona, because I felt like I'd been given the opportunity to try just a little bit of everything, including casino manager. And I had progressed to director of casino marketing before I left. And I just knew that if I wanted to get the experience that was going to make me well diversified in the industry, it meant I was going to have to get out of what was, I don't want to say comfortable in the wrong way, because I'm not a big fan of the word comfortable. I don't like to get comfortable, but it was a world that I was successful in, and I knew how to navigate it, and I knew who my resources were. And I had had a few calls from recruiters, was really what kind of opened my eyes to opportunities outside of Verona. And Thunder Valley was one of them. And, you know, I flew up for the interview. I was so nervous, really questioning whether or not I was doing the right thing, whether or not I was ready to take that leap. And sure enough, they offered me the position. And I still remember the very first day that I set foot on that casino floor as an employee, and it was this beautiful facility just outside of Sacramento, one of our competitors actually here in market now. And they had recently undergone a hotel expansion, casino renovation. It was just one of the most beautiful properties that I had been in. And I thought, what am I going to be able to do to make a difference here, to really make my mark? And it's very interesting how properties look from the outside versus what you find when you're actually on the inside. And that was one of the best, hardest experiences of my career, because going from a place where, you know, it was the Cheers effect. Everyone knew my name and I knew everyone's name. I had their phone numbers memorized. I knew who to call for what. And then finding that every casino, every tribe has a different personality, has a different approach, and really learning firsthand the benefit of, you know, taking that time to not make changes, to really just get to know who you're working with and what their values are and what's working, what isn't working. And then also learning that, you know, it's not like you can take this marketing briefcase property to property and expect that what you've done elsewhere is going to work perfectly at that new property. So it's really, how do you take the best and adapt it to what the market's needs are? It's an exciting time when you first start at a new role, but it's also daunting. But you never know until you try it. And the more experience that you get as a professional, the better off you are. I know I was following your career, Peter, as you were not only moving from property to property, but also going to school for your MBA. And it was, through looking at colleagues like you in the industry that I looked back at myself and said, how do I continue to make sure that I am growing and developing and learning at the same pace as this industry is expanding and growing and developing? And I have never regretted that change. It was one of the most emotional days of my life. I cried all the way home from Verona the day I gave my notice. I cried all the way home the day that I picked up my belongings, and I cried all the way from San Diego to the Grapevine when I was making the move up to Thunder Valley. But my husband and I often reflect back on that time and wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, and you touched on something, your career growth, you were stepping out to take a chance and to continue to enhance your career. You're one of the few that have made the leap from marketing to senior leadership of a property. I mean, that, 15 years ago, you just didn't see that very much. I think you saw a lot of CFOs make the jump to property leadership. You saw individuals come from the operations side of the equation. You didn't really find very many marketers that made that successful transition, but you're one of them. Can you talk through that? I know a lot of marketers out there may be interested in thinking, is there a path forward? How can I do that? What are some of the things you would offer to those people in your career journey, what you've learned that you look back on and you say, boy, these were the things that I did that helped me be in the best possible position to be considered for that type of leadership role?
Yeah, great question. And it's interesting. You and I have talked a little bit about this with some of our other colleagues. Steve Neely is a great example who immediately jumps to mind, who, came from that marketing path. I think, and maybe you agree, I think the best marketers are those that are just innately curious. We're interested in, the property and how it works. We're interested in the market. When I moved to Thunder Valley, one of the first things I did was get every newspaper I could, get every magazine I could, try to find all of the local events, really try to learn about this area. I think of it like being a tourist, right? It's my new hometown, but I'm going to be a tourist there first, and I want to find out as much as I can about that market. And that also translated into my experience when I went from marketing into the casino manager side. I had to go through, or I was fortunate enough to go through a full casino boot camp. I spent 3 months shadowing position by position, department by department, to understand how their rules worked. And that was really eye-opening to me, to be able to take that experience back with me when I transitioned into the director of casino marketing role, and to apply what we do from a marketing standpoint to how it actually impacts the operation. That was when I really started to develop a philosophy about what we provide to our guests and the experience we give them, but also how we execute upon that behind the scenes. And the more we work to make that as effortless as possible behind the scenes, and to improve the work that goes into the, whatever it may be, campaign, promotion, special event, the more we refine our processes, the better everyone's going to be equipped to give a great experience. And I didn't have that until I spent time on swing shift and grave shift, seeing when the coupons hit, and the way that guests would maybe try to exploit some of the disclaimer language, or the confusion that was caused because marketing thought we had explained the rules of the promotion really well, but we didn't realize, what some of the loopholes might be. And so, that innate curiosity served me well when I moved into the casino manager role and through my casino boot camp experience, because I just really wanted to learn and to know. And then with that experience and training, after serving in that role for 3 years, moving back into a marketing position with an entirely different perspective, then translating that as I grew into vice president of marketing at Thunder Valley, at Morongo, and then at Agua Caliente, it was really a deep understanding and appreciation for how interconnected marketing is with all of the other functions on property. And the fact that my colleagues at the table were not only my supporters, but also my stakeholders, right? When I'm developing a marketing calendar for the year, that's going to drive a lot of the discussion from slots and table games, food and beverage and hotel with regards to how they project their revenues. It's really reliant upon what we're doing as a team, but also how marketing is out front leading that charge. And if marketing's doing that in a silo or a vacuum, it just doesn't work. It has to be collaborative. So I think that it's that curiosity and collaboration that the best marketers have that really equips them to be leaders, and to lead in the same way that they led their divisions. But I think that those qualities can be developed in other positions as well. I think it really comes down to, this is, said this today with the team, when you get behind the scenes at a casino, you realize it's a small city. We're our own municipality out here in Brooks, California. We've got a wastewater treatment plant, an electrical microgrid that powers us in case PG&E goes down. There's just so many facets to what we do that are, to me, endlessly fascinating to learn about, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. I enjoy it. I think I'm rambling a little bit here because I could go on, but I think it really comes down to curiosity and collaboration.
And in your current role at Cache Creek, have you implemented any sort of programs or opportunities specifically for individuals that may want to learn about other components of the operation, or maybe even expanded? You have a golf course over there as well, I think you mentioned. So if somebody was in the casino that wanted to learn a little bit about golf course management or vice versa, do you have any sort of programs that are available to individuals to be able to do that? And was that based on sort of your personal experience?
We've invested a lot in training, and I have to give full credit to our human resources department led by Vice President of HR, Ron Vargas. There's a huge focus on training here, and that training is on its face related to guest service and also public speaking. But a lot of our employees, when they come out of that program, realize that it was a little bit of a bait and switch, that the training is not only about our guest service initiatives and also how to train others in those guest service initiatives, but it's an opportunity to build your network with other departments, to learn more about what those departments do and how they accomplish their objectives on a daily basis. And it's leadership training. It's really preparing them to be able to lead a small division, a large division, and to grow through that. And what we've seen through those formal programs, but also some informal programs, we introduced about 2 years ago now. We've been working with a continuous improvement group, Next Level Partners. I know Yamava has partnered with them in the past as well. And through their continuous improvement efforts with different divisions, we're able to identify some of our most creative thinkers. And we've actually seen those individuals who thrive in that environment move into cross-promoted, cross-training positions and move into director level roles where they take on additional and different responsibility. Really notable to me is our current director of continuous improvement, who came from many, many years in the slots department. Our director of golf operations has been promoted in the last year to director of hospitality. Based upon his skill set, he now oversees retail and spa operations in addition to the golf course. So, that's really reaching back into my Verona bag of tricks. It was about hiring the right personality and then training them for the role. And it's just really, that to me is one of the most fulfilling parts of what we do, is when you're able to help and see others grow the way that we've grown in this business.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I want to double click on something there. You mentioned, hiring for personality. Could you explain when you're looking to hire someone? And I know it varies by position and situation, but are there some core sort of characteristics that jump out at you that you're looking for when you're talking with someone?
Yeah, I'm going to start with one that's going to seem really silly, and it's going to probably show my age and my bias. But, first and foremost, we want someone who makes eye contact. There's so much today that revolves around our phones. And I think we really took a step backwards during the pandemic because we were masking and we were separating ourselves, and all for the right reasons. But it's almost as if some of us started to use that as an opportunity to insulate ourselves away from interacting with each other. And we're looking for people who are engaging, who make eye contact, who show that they are open to getting to know other people, right? I think that's one of the base components is, do we have employees that are warm and welcoming to our guests when they get here? Are they warm and welcoming to others? I mean, we even carry it behind the scenes. We didn't bring the zombies out this year, but we had the zombies for the past couple of years, because one of my pet peeves is when our employees are going from their workplace to their break and they've got their phone up in front of their face and their earbuds in, and they're not interacting with anyone in the back of the house. So I'm the first one kind of like, hi, make sure you put that phone down. Look where you're walking. Good morning, how are you? Because that's where we start the tone, is behind the scenes. So it really starts with, are you someone who likes people? Are you someone who is open to engaging in conversation and getting to know people? Are you curious, I'm going to use that word again, about where people come from and what their experience is, and how we can make that experience just a little bit better. We call it the cherry on top as part of our guest service training. So for us, it's really just, are you open? And beyond that, there's a lot we can do to help you gain the skills that you need for your particular position. We do in-house dealer training. We do in-house bartender training. There's a lot of other things that we have looked at and considered to help people continue to grow and progress here at the organization.
Oh, that is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. One of the tactics I like to deploy when I interview someone is, I call it a jam session, right? So I'll take the resume, I'll look at it for a minute, I'll put it aside, and I think that throws off candidates, right? They're like, wait, you don't want to talk about my background? I'm like, no, you made it this far. That means you're clear there. We know technically you know what you're talking about. I want to get to know you. So let's jam. Like, give me some topics. Anything you want to ask. And it's really intended to break down sort of, I think when people interview, they put their interview sort of game face on. I'm trying to get past that, right? I want to get to the individual. What is this person like as a leader? How do they communicate with others? How are they going to, if you join the organization, the game face is off, and now what are they like, in the wild, as I like to say it, and that has worked pretty well for me. I think it accomplishes many of the same things that you just touched upon, because it really does give some insight into how they are as leaders and their communication style.
I love that, Peter. And I'll just add, one of the things that I introduced here when I first started, we had a number of our senior level leadership vice presidents who were retiring. And so I filled the position for myself, and then walked in, had to hire a VP of marketing, VP of slots, and VP of, gosh, I'm blanking now on it, but there were several positions I had to fill. Suffice it to say, what was most important was, it was really critical to me that they fit within the culture of the team. So it wasn't just getting to know them as a person, but it was also doing panel interviews. And the vice presidents here were like, well, what do you mean I have to interview them? Like, that's your job. You hire them, and we'll get along with them. We'll make it work. And I was like, no, I want to know how the chemistry is between you and these new members of the team, because I inherited an amazing culture here at Cache Creek Casino Resort, and it's the most important thing to me to protect. And every person that we add into this ecosystem has the potential to affect that for the positive or for the negative. And we want to make sure that, it's going to be a good fit for them. They're going to be here for a long time, but also it's going to be a good fit for us.
Absolutely. That meshing with the team, gelling, if you will, with the team is so critical. So critical. So speaking of which, if you could go back in time and give yourself advice, it sounds like, you said a lot, but if you got one piece of advice you can give to yourself, let's say 15 years ago, we'll go back 15 years, what would you say? Given everything you just talked about, a lot of these great leadership skills developed, is there anything specific you would tell yourself 15 years ago?
One of the employees in our Cache Creek Experience Orientation today asked me what it was like having this job. And one of the things I wish that some of the leaders I came up under could have shared more with me is about how hard these jobs are, and especially in these last 3 years. Now, don't get me wrong, it's incredibly rewarding. There are more highs than lows, but there's no textbook for what we do, right? At a certain point, you move beyond jobs that have a training manual or a training regimen, and it really relies upon your judgment, discernment, experience, education to be able to take very complex matters and to distill them down, find solutions that work in the best interest of the organization, that don't factor in politics, that don't factor in individual agendas. And, I knew it would be hard. I knew that these weren't easy jobs, but I think when you and I were coming up in the business, it was very much a stiff upper lip, keep calm and carry on. Never let them see you sweat. And my advice to myself would be, you can do it. There are going to be more sacrifices than you realize. And just think about who you are and what your values are, what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not willing to sacrifice. And as long as you stay clear on that, on who you are and true to yourself, then I think this is an amazing industry. And it means that sometimes you have to find the place where you can be who you are. I was very fortunate to find that here at Cache Creek and many other places along the way. But it's not always easy. And these are jobs where, you're being watched, you're being judged, and it really takes some strong courage and conviction to be able to stay steady through the challenges that we've all been through in the last few years. And, I'm certain that if I was having this conversation with any group of my employees today, there would be some that think I've done an amazing job, and there would be some that think it's just meh, and there are some that think I don't do a great job. And that's just part of being a leader that you have to make peace with. And I think that's the best advice is, find your center and stay true to it.
So you bring up a lot there, trying to unpack is there a daily routine perhaps that you're willing to share with the audience that helps you cope? I mean, you're right. There's a tremendous amount of responsibility. Every day is different. There's different issues you have to tackle. Some are heavier than others, but most impact many people. It's not like most decisions you're making at your level are not just impacting 1 or 20, or it could be 2,000 people that are impacted, as well as generations. Some of the decisions you make have generational sort of impacts. That's heavy. Is there a daily routine that helps you cope and get through that, or how do you do that? Is there anything, or you just come in and go, no, I'm going to tackle it and I'm good?
It takes a lot of things. I don't know that it's daily because I'm sure you're a lot like me and no 2 days are the same. Um, but I would say on a weekly basis, and I'm really open about this, and I think that more people should be. I see a therapist weekly. It helps me with my personal life and my professional life, and just to talk things through with someone who's independently objective and can help me to work through whatever it is I'm dealing with. I find, at our levels, sometimes people tell us what they think we want to hear or what we need to hear, and it can be really hard to get honest, unbiased feedback. That's really critically important to me because I don't ever want to live or work in an echo chamber where I just think I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. And, the downside of that is I'm my own worst critic. And that's part of where therapy comes in to help me with that as well. I have an amazing support system at home. I have a wonderful, loving, supportive husband. I have a sister who is extremely supportive as well. Friends that, really pick me up when I have hard days. And staying in contact with them is one of the ways. I don't do it as often as I would like to, but it makes a big difference to have that human connection. And then I've been studying a little bit lately about burnout because I think after the past 3-4 years that we've all been through, for me 5 years here at Cache Creek, and I walked into some challenges even pre-pandemic that had to be mitigated really early on. And so I'm finding that I'm at a stage in my life. I'm not quite 50, but I'm approaching that stage, and how I care for myself is different now than it was in my 30s and my 40s. And this book, Burnout, I can't pronounce the authors' names, but it's written by two sisters who both have their PhDs. And it's fantastic work. It talks about how energy and stress get stored in our bodies. And so for me, making time to move, even if it's just stretching, if I get home late and I know that I'm not going to be able to get a workout in, it's, can I lay on the ground in front of the TV with the dog and stretch and try to release some of what I've accumulated over the course of the day? Can I take a walk? Can I go for a run? How can I release that energy so that the next day I'm ready to start as fresh as possible? And so it's a lot of different techniques on a daily and weekly basis, but I think it's really important to have those strategies to help you manage stress. And then most importantly is there are times I have to just not be stuck in my phone, not be thinking about work. And I'm curious and I love it, but the more I do it, at some point I lose perspective. So taking those breaks, those mental health breaks to do something else really helps me come back recharged.
Well, I like your approach because it's very balanced, right? You spoke about, and thank you for sharing about your how you address your needs mentally as well as physically. And I think oftentimes we draw ourselves to one or the other and not really balance both. Those are very, very good. Stretch, I never even thought of stretching, but I like stretching. Stretching, I think most people don't think of stretching as an activity, but it really is now that you think about it. And what a great thing. I wrote that down. That's something I'm going to personally try because I enjoy it. I just don't think of it, but you could do it while you're watching TV or doing something else, right? It's an activity that lends itself to a different type of participation. So thank you for sharing that. As we wrap up the podcast, we like to ask our guests, what are 3 tips you would provide to anyone who would like to take their career to the next level in whatever industry? There may be hospitality folks listening. It could be a different industry. We have listeners from all over the world in different backgrounds. Are there any tips, 3 tips? Maybe it's less than 3, maybe it's more. Anything you have to say before we close out?
I think it's my curiosity that drives this instinct. And sometimes it's a little bit different today than it was early in my career. But one of the things that really has benefited me professionally and personally has been not being afraid to put my hand up and to say, okay, that's a new project. I don't know how to do it, but I'll figure it out. Or if you point me in the right direction, I'm going to give it my all. So that willingness to get uncomfortable, first and foremost, right? Get out of your comfort zone, because that's really where growth happens. And two, putting yourself out there and being able to, you have to, it's not to say that you can take on everything, right? Don't put yourself out in a situation where you don't have that interest or capacity. But if it's something that you want to learn, you will gain, and your employer, whoever you're working with, is also going to gain from your willingness to try something new. So I think those are two really important components. And then, the third one, and this is something that I don't think I would have said when I was younger, because I was in such a hurry to move through the ranks and to, I had set these targets and these deadlines for myself. And now that I look back on it in retrospect, I don't think we need to be in such a hurry. I think there's a lot to benefit by making sure that you master one level before you move up to the next one. It's something that I see now in some of the young up and coming workers that we're engaging with here at Cache Creek. Is there's a lot of enthusiasm, and they're eager and they want to move up, and I want them to move up as well. But I want them to have the life experience and the professional experience to be able to balance the demands that are coming, because grown-up Kari knows what baby Kari didn't know when she was in such a hurry. And time really can be a gift. So I think, willingness to get outside your comfort zone, the initiative to put yourself out there and to take on additional responsibilities, but then the wisdom to know that good things come to those who wait. And sometimes it's all in the timing of what happens to accelerate your career.
Thank you for sharing that. The number one question I get is, when someone asks me the question of what do you say to your younger self, my words are be patient, right? And I found that I was more successful when I was patient than when I wasn't, but it took many years of experience. And I think it's a very common characteristic to have when you're young and you just want to go from 0 to 100. But you know what? There's a lot of satisfaction and pleasure in the journey. And oftentimes we forget about that. We just want to get to the destination, but the journey itself could be rewarding and revealing and shed some light about you as a person and help open the door for you in terms of, well, where do you really want to go? Not where you think you want to go. And that was sort of an aha moment for me, was where I thought I want to go and where I really wanted to go were two different things. And it changed, as my career progressed. And it was the journey that helped me get there. So what a wonderful way to close out the podcast, Kari. It was such a pleasure to talk to you today. And we need to do this more often. I know we get little conversations here and there from time to time, but I really enjoyed the in-depth conversation we had today. Let's not wait too long before the next one. Thank you for joining us on Next Level Careers. Until next time, thank you, Peter Arceo, here from Yamava Resort Casino. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Check out more episodes at thenextlevelcareers.com.